And it's hard for work like that to big open section.
So do you think that it doesn't necessarily work as a whole? So this is more of a display of 32 artists who happen to live in greater Los Angeles area right now.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, because I often wonder about the format itself. It's a difficult format, this biannual thing.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, to play devil's advocate for the curators and for, biennial curators generally, it's always a monumental challenge in terms of curating. And I tend to be forgiving, to the extent that the basic formula is that you get exposed to a lot of work that you weren't familiar with. And you find a couple of things or a few things that you're really into, And if you get that, that's fine. That's good, and to expect any more than that is to expect too much.
I agree with you. I absolutely agree. But I think that it's difficult how we are now. It's almost like the biennial has become this form and we travel all the world to do it. And they're interesting events, but there's sometimes, or I would say oftentimes, very difficult for the visitor actually to navigate.
Yeah. Well, I wish for just like 10 minutes of our conversation, we had on a sort of non-art, visitor to the Hammer still, right? To get their take on it.
Yeah.
But I will say, just for what it's worth, that, and this is noteworthy in consideration of the fact that the Museum of Contemporary Art, MoCA, Los Angeles, just made this big news by hiring Klaus Biesenbach, to be the new director. And one of the things that Christopher Knight, the art critic for the LA Times, wrote in his sort of letter of suggestions that he published to the new director is make MoCA free. Right? That was one of the big points that he made. And the reason that I mentioned that is because the Hammer is free. And every time that I was at the Hammer, and this was like 5 different times, most of the times that I was there for just like for a half hour, but the last time I was there was more like an hour, I would say, or an hour and a half. Every time I was there were a lot of visitors. Like
good.
Yeah, good, but almost too many at times.
Yeah, but that's a sweet problem to have, And most of the time it's the opposite.
Well, it's a sweet problem for them to have. For me, and maybe other picky viewers, it's like, I'm trying to contemplate this, in quiet and solitude, and you are fucking up my experience.
Yeah, no. But that's what it's like to go to the Louvre or to go to the National Gallery in London. There's just too many people to actually engage with things. So
yeah, exactly. It wasn't that bad.
Now, that's interesting, though. Do you think that this show attracts more visitors than others?
I do. Yeah. And that is interesting, isn't it? Because, is it the banners around town? I mean, how is it that your average civilian knows? Oh, here's the other thing, too. This is summer, right? So people's schedules are clearly more relaxed than the rest of the year, right? Especially young people's. Right. So, adolescents and children. So, they're much more likely to be able to go see a museum show in the summer than the rest of the year. So that I think is a part of the factor. But yeah, I mean, was far more crowded than I've seen any non-Made in LA show for sure.
That's nice. I mean, that's interesting that people find it. It must mean that they've done a good promotional job for it.
Yep.
And maybe because the way in which it's launched, this is 32 artists living right now somewhere around where you are too. Go and have a look at what they do.
Maybe. Yeah. Again, that
and it's I mean, in all that, I think it's kind of genius. It's a very simple way of actually getting people to look at art and to see what's going on.
Yeah, I guess so. Again, that would be for sure one of the questions I would ask our, fictional civilian viewer to the show. What made you go see the show? Were you excited about seeing living young contemporary LA artists and what they're up to? And I would imagine they would say, no, I was just on lunch break and, I saw the banner. I was like, I'll go check it out.
But also I think that people are more curious about things than we give them credit for. Especially if you go on your lunch break to the museum, you want to be there. You don't necessarily have to go there.
True. Yeah. Let's give these folks some credit. Sure.
Yeah. And it has to do a lot of course, with reviews and whether they've heard friends and family talk about the show and so on. But certain things are also, I guess, more easily accessible for everyone or for more people, I would imagine.
Here's a thought that I'm having as you're saying that. I think it's important to recognize that the Hammer, among other places in LA, is a center for culture, right? So
yes,
it's in Westwood, first of all, which is right by UCLA, which is a very heavily foot trafficked part of Los Angeles. It's also fairly centrally located in Los Angeles. And I was thinking, compared to galleries, which are galleries are pretty much deserted, compared to a show like this. But then I was thinking, well, then there's Hauser and Wirth Gallery in downtown LA. Every time I've been to Hauser and Wirth, there have been a lot of people there. I even went there on a Wednesday. It wasn't as crowded for sure as it was on a Saturday, but there were still a number of people there checking out the show. So it's not just museums like the Hammer, but even places like, Hauser and Wirth, I would say, is right at the top of the list of commercial galleries in Los Angeles that really gets that kind of foot traffic.
And also, they are a gallery that call themselves an institution for education. They've been doing this for a very long time. I think they want the public to find the galleries, to go there a lot. And I think they have the capacity to actually look after all these visitors. They have the bookshop, they have a restaurant.
Yeah,
it's a very nice day out.
Right.
They have people working in the galleries. You can ask them if you have a question.
Right.
So they have the infrastructure for visitors.
That's right.
And I don't think that many galleries have that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, right. Yeah, I'd be interested to know how big a factor that is having, that extra staff on hand. Particularly, there are those people at the information desk at Hauser and Wirth.
Oh, I think they're vital. Honestly, I think they're so important.
Right.
Yeah.
Even if they don't know the answers to your questions.
They're there and they smile and they say hello. No, I think it's enough that you just have someone at the front desk.
Yeah, there you go. And this goes back to just those people listening to us talking right now who have not heard the conversation you and I did in that cafe a year ago or whenever it was. 9 months ago.
Yeah.
We talked about that same phenomena of going into galleries and what it's like, whether it's going to be a gallery worker who's really busy, or a gallery where they have a dedicated person to interact with you.
And I think that what we want is someone to interact with. That is the great thing about art. If you have a piece of art in front of you and you have a person standing next to you, you can talk about something because you have this piece in front of you. It's not that hard, actually. Even though it's very scary to people to walk into a gallery, or for many people it is. Did you spontaneously start talking to anyone as you were visiting the Made in LA show?
No, except for my one question to one of the guards.
Did you get a good answer?
Yeah, I got an adequate answer. So probably my favorite presentation of Made in LA is, for those people who haven't seen it, because it's still up another few weeks, E.J. Hill's installation, which is in what I think they call the Vault Gallery or something like that. It's a really nice space that has a vault-like ceiling, and it features an installation, and it also features a stand, essentially a trophy stand, where there are 3 levels, right, for first, second, and third.
Oh yeah.
So standing on the top of this little wooden stand is E.J. Hill himself. Like a statue. He's standing there like a statue, completely still, as you go in and see his installation every time you go in there. And so what I wanted to know, having seen it the first time when I went back, I wanted to ask whoever the guard was, have you been in this room much? Because I'm wondering if anybody talks to him, like interacts with him. And she said, no, not really. I mean, they try, but he doesn't say anything. He's just silent. So he really does this statue performance throughout his time in that room, which I presume are all gallery hours.
That is a big job.
Yeah, it is a big job. And that is why, in conjunction with the piece, I should say, because it's an installation, it's kind of like a miniature track in this space, with photographs and with these sort of barriers, like these obstacles around this track. And the gist of what he's done in the past, and I haven't done a lot of reading about it, but is he's done these performances where he's run around his high school, you know, for like hours at a time. He ran around his college, El Camino College. I don't know exactly for how long it was, so I don't want to over exaggerate that. But, you know, for an extended period of time. And the rough sort of description is that it was showing support, camaraderie, you know, brotherhood, if you will, for those who are in the margins, you know, the people of color, LGBT people, etc. It was sort of a ritual of support for them. And I'm forgetting one part of the equation, so forgive me, but that's the gist of it. And so you have a couple of photographs that are sort of relics from these performances, you know, this little track with sort of an obstacle course, and then him standing like a statue, wearing sort of an athlete type of getup, not like a tracksuit, but he's wearing either, you know, white shorts, white shirt, and a white jacket, white athletic jacket, or black of the same. When I've been there, they were always white. So he kind of looks like, you know, maybe a polo player, you know, in repose or something like that, you know, and he doesn't move when you're there. And I took a couple of pictures, and I felt like on the second picture that I took, he was kind of like eyeing me, maybe like his eyes might have moved towards me. I just kind of felt them. But then when I looked at the picture itself, it didn't look like he was looking at anybody. So all that to say that when I went in, particularly the very first time into that room, and first sort of saw the gist of this installation and then saw him standing there like a statue, I just found that very powerful. And I think the way that his presence informed that installation really worked well.
Sounds quite powerful, actually.
Yeah. I hope I could bring it to you.
Because then you are in the room and all of a sudden you notice that there's a human being, there's a person standing there. It's not a sculpture.
Yeah.
It's flesh and blood.
And it's very awkward. And I think that's another important point, that when you, for me and presumably others who experience that piece, it's distinctly different from experiencing a performer performing in a set time, because this is contextualized in an installation. Right. So you go into this room and it's just you, him, and the guard, you know, at any given time. That's what it was for me. The last time I was there, there were several people who were in there with me. But I was actually relieved of that, because I felt more comfortable taking a couple shots of him, because I followed a woman who did the same. You know what I mean? I didn't ever want to just walk up, stand in front of him, and even take pictures of him from just a few feet away, let alone start talking to him, you know, which I fantasized about that prospect, you know, of like, hey, you know, I'm really enjoying this piece. You know, I know you're really busy right now, but would you consider, well, after this show ends, coming on my podcast to talk about this? You know, I just imagine doing that, but believe me, I'm smart enough not to have done it.
Now you should send him an email.
Yeah.
Show is
no, indeed.
Yeah. You will definitely. You should interview him.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
You don't put a business card at the foot of his feet, you know, while he's standing there like a statue. I don't think that would be very wise.
Don't do that. That would be ridiculous.
Right.
Oh, wow. So you went back several times. I think that in itself is, it's quite impressive.
Well, let me be fair. Yeah, let me be fair about that, because I think I mentioned this to you earlier. I was working a day job that actually started in Westwood 1 or 2 days a week. So it would start around 2:30-ish, and sometimes I would get there early and I would have some extra time. So I would go over, and that's how I'd started, actually. That's how I first saw the show. So I went over to the Hammer, which was just a block away. The first time I was there, I probably saw, like 4 different artists' presentations. The time I went back, I maybe saw another 4 or 5, etc. So I just kind of kept working my through it. And then the last time when I went for like a longer session, explicitly to go see the show, I got to revisit the things that I had already seen, not all of them, but most of them. And then I saw just the few things that I hadn't seen at all, and so by the time I had done that last session, I was like, I'm good. You know what I mean? I am definitely good.
So you're not going back, actually?
No way.
You're done now.
With all due respect, I have had my fill. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much for talking to me about this. I find this very, very interesting.
Yeah. It's always great to talk to you, Jenny.